What's happening? Welcome back to Behind the Curtain. I'm Chris Page, being joined by my counterpart, one of my best friends. We do several podcasts together on a weekly basis, and this just happens to be another one. John Cable, what's up, man?
Woo! We're back again behind the curtain. Here we go.
Yeah, as you can tell by the music coming in, it's definitely not going to be a program around a 60-minute Iron Man match. We've got some things happening on the backside. We're going to start live streaming shortly. We're going to hold off on that until we are ready to rock and roll, so we can show the match as we're going through it. So we pivoted this week, and this week we're actually gonna cover the nWo and some of the hot times that they had dominating WCW for 83 weeks on the minimum on a rating side of the equation, and all the fun that came along with it. John, before we get into that, world class last week. What are you thinking?
I thought it was a good show. There were some criticisms on our factualities. Apparently we like to just get on the internet and talk shit. Oh wait, we are not professionals. That's right. We're not professionals.
Well, considering I was like two when this stuff kicked off, no, I didn't watch it live and in living color. I have watched back a lot of world class, but stuff that we're talking about, what we're touching on, is just kind of what we know of. At the end of the day, were we perfect? No. Are we gonna be perfect? No. But are we gonna have a lot of fun trying to talk about some professional wrestling? Absolutely, because that's why you and I are here. I can't speak for
I
anybody
mean,
else. Shout out to all the new subscribers to the channel. We appreciate that. I will say that our channel was created in a niche internet wrestling market, and you and I decided to branch out a little bit. And since we have, our platform's going to kind of constantly growing. So without you guys doing that, we might not be able to continue doing this. So we appreciate you for that. And we appreciate your comments, good, bad, indifferent. It doesn't matter. We don't take anything personal, and that's just who we are. Um, I'm ready,
facts.
man. I'm ready to rock and roll and talk about some nWo, man, because it changed the landscape of Monday nights in the midst of the Monday Night War.
Well, I mean, the Monday Night War was a big deal, but this literally, I think, for me, when this whole thing kicked off, I remember watching the episode when Hall came and interrupted the match and had his infamous challenge talk. And the whole thing to me was very surreal. It's like, wait a minute. There's no way that this guy from WWE is now on WCW saying the things that he's saying. How is this even possible? This feels illegal.
I remember what was that, 96? So I was either a freshman or a junior in high school when this went down. I remember because again, the internet, while it was there, it wasn't a prevalent thing.
Not yet.
So I wasn't hip to contracts being up, et cetera, at 15 years old, 16 years old, however old I was. So when I saw Scott, or I thought it was Razor. You know what I mean? I was a kid. I was, what the fuck is Razor Ramon doing on WCW TV? What is going on here? And he interrupted the Mike Enos match, um, gave the speech, and I again, a kid, I was like, oh shit, I didn't think that this was possible. What am I
Because it had
watching
never
here?
really been seen before, not in the mainstream anyway. Like, I know there are probably some invasion angles that happen in the territories. There are definitely some invasion angles that happened in other feds and other countries, but we had not seen this caliber of TV star from one place to another, and it was mainly because of the contract resolutions and how Vince had his guys locked the fuck down. But then you see this happen, And it was like, wait a minute, what is going on right now? And to this day, I am sure that the conversation of had WWE already bought WCW still happens behind closed doors.
This is the kickoff to what ends up being, you know, a long term story arc. I don't know if we're gonna dive into all of it or if we're just gonna hit the high notes of it. I really think, uh, first of all, Scott Hall showing up, not naming himself as Scott Hall, and definitely showing the signs of Razor was, on hindsight, looking back on it, it's a smart fucking
Hey, yo.
move. Yeah, I mean, it was a smart move. And then the hook at the end, let them know, pick your three, and I've got a big surprise for you next week. Again, not smart to the business at this point. Um, and I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? A big surprise. And of course, the hand gesture. He holds I got a big surprise. Takes his hand and sticks it up over his head. And what the fuck is he talking about? And lo and behold, the following week, Kevin Nash.
Just shows up out of nowhere.
Now again, Diesel is who I'm thinking. We got Diesel on. Again, how is this possible? Obviously, as a kid, that's the mindset that you're in, and what's gonna happen next, and it just set the stage for what was, probably one of the most looked at six-man tags at Bash of the Beach. I mean, they build up. Who's the third man? We're not telling you. The story itself was pretty solid, even down to the six-man tag itself. Hall and Nash coming out by themselves. Of course, by this time they've had to come out on television and say they don't work for the WWF or the WWE. Yeah, WWF at that point. They are, here under contract, et cetera, et cetera. And it was done in such a passive way. I believe it was on a pre-show for a pay-per-view. But the pay-per-view prior to Bash at the Beach, if I'm not mistaken. It may have been Great American Bash. I'm sure we'll be corrected. But it set the stage for, who is the third man. They named the puppies Luger, Sting, and Savage. And you knew about Hall, you knew about Nash, and even like I said, the delivery of that match was fucking, to me, I thought it was flawless. Having Luger taken out in the opening minutes, and it's now diverted into a tag match. The crowd was into it from start to finish.
I mean, how could they not be?
I mean, to me, watching it back for the time frame, but it was white hot. And then yeah, go ahead.
And then it went nuclear. So we've got this supposed six-man tag. Luger gets taken out. It sets it up to be a tag match, so they don't have to name their third guy. We get to this spot where Anderson's counting them out after the low blow he misses, and then enters Hulk Hogan. Everybody in the arena thought Hogan was coming down to replace Luger in the match.
Same.
Everyone at home thought that they were watching Hulk Hogan come to replace Luger in the match, and there was going to be a 3-on-2 beatdown, and WCW was going to come out on top. And then it didn't. It was the moment that the world heard a billion hearts break all at once. Because every Hulkamaniac on the planet lost their minds when Hogan turned on the WCW.
And excuse me.
Insanity.
With Hogan. So I can remember as a kid, in that time you could see with crowd reactions that Hogan, the Hulk dust and the red and yellow has run its to me had ran its course in WCW when they landed Hogan in '93. It was good for obviously for the WCW. Uh,
Yep.
and Red and Yellow Fever, it ran wild for a year or so. But if you go back and see like the program with the Dungeon of Doom and stuff prior to that, you could tell that there's a shift in the crowd. Like I think
Oh,
everybody's getting tired of Red and Yellow. And Hogan walks out, drops the leg on Savage, and as a kid, I was like, what have I just seen? What
history, sir. You saw history.
what just happened here? And the post match promo was solid. Um, I think the best thing that they did following that was not having them on TV the following week, and kind of sold the what's gonna happen here. Because now you've got Hogan, Hall, and Nash, and of course once the shock and awe set in, and as I got older and went back and looked at some of the angle over the last 10, 15 years, I think that keeping the NWO kind of in the background on that first program and selling the fact that again we don't know what is going to happen next. It laid the foundation and it had me hooked. And I don't know, man. Like thinking back on this stuff now as an adult, going back to the childhood, like it jogs so many different little weird memories. Like I remember on the Monday or the Nitro after Bash at the Beach, I was like, it was the next night. It's like, of course they're showing stills and they're selling it and putting it over big, and as they fucking should, because business
Well, I
just
mean,
changed.
it was the biggest thing that they had ever done up to this point, in my opinion. It was absolutely massive.
When they advertised, that Hogan and Hall and Nash were going to be live on Nitro, man, I was immediately thinking, where's Sting, man? Stinger's going to get him some of Hogan. I thought that's where they were going off rip, to put everything together, right? And of course I was
Well,
wrong.
I mean, Sting's the franchise of WCW, always had been. So, of course, you're like, well, the hero's got to come out and do the thing, right? But no, they sold it even harder. And the moment that it sunk in with me, right? Like we saw the thing happen in the ring where Hogan rips the shirt and shows the NWO shirt and he joins them and all the shit between him and Savage. And we see this dichotomy shift from like Hogan and Savage kind of working together as faces to seeing them go back to their feuding days, right? But the thing that really sold it to me was I want to depression's not right. The outrage. The outrage on Gene Okerlund's face when he did the interview with him backstage,
How
right?
well he did the
He was
you talking about the when Hogan made the turn, they did that in the ring, brother. And
right, but that the outrage on Okerlund's face, right?
correct.
When he's just pissed off that Hogan would turn his back on the WCW. I don't know if you need to give him a Emmy or what, but Okerlund's face, the utter disgust was just thick enough to cut. That was what sold the whole angle for me. Because he was the guy I always looked to like be the barometer of WCW. Like who's a face and who's a heel? Does Gene like him or not? Is the real test. And if you're friends with Gene Okerlund, then you're a face, and if you aren't, then you're a heel. And this moment changed the dichotomy between Gene Okerlund and Hulk Hogan that had been there for a decade or more. And that was what sold it to me. That was how I got hooked into it.
This actually might have been one of the last Okerlund interviews with Hogan. I could be wrong until he flip back babyface later on down the line. But I agree that Gene Okerlund really put that over the top. Uh,
Yeah, best acting ever.
just it was great. So did Bobby Heenan. So did Tony Schiavone. I think all those guys deserve credit for really selling what the fuck just happened here. And I think something that made this interesting is because it was fresh. It was new. You haven't seen a heel Hogan since what back in the late '70s when he did some stuff with Andre, and
Yeah,
maybe in the early '80s before he turned full blown babyface and came back over to the WWE after or WWF at that point after Rocky 3.
right.
Um, but it's not like he hadn't been a heel before, but it was, he was not Hollywood, right? It was a typical big man, generic kind of heel. What made this made this fresh? This is a new Hulk Hogan, and hearing some of the things that he was saying was insane to me because I grew up Hulkamaniac, right? Like I grew up on the yellow and reds, the
On the
training.
eat your vitamins,
Yeah,
say your prayers.
fucking right, man. This was my hero, and he just stabs everybody in the back, and uh,
When he told Okerlund to tell the people to shut up if you want to hear what I have, that was it for me. I was done. I was like, wait, what did he say?
that he said that. Um, the next couple of months, it was the angle is off and running. Obviously the next couple of months are crucial and critical. You want to strike while the iron's hot. So as far as the NWO is concerned, like what do they do? Man, they start taking out fucking everybody. Um,
Well, they
this
had this whole prison mentality. Like, who are the big dogs? I gotta knock their legs right out from under them.
it
And they did
Well,
everywhere.
yeah. I mean, there's, and I'm not sure where on the timeline this is, but when you talk about the beatings that some of the WCW guys took, my mind immediately draws to Rey Mysterio being lawn darted into the side of a
Oh, the
trailer.
trailer.
Yeah, I
God,
mean,
that was incredibly cringe when he launched him ass over tea kettle face first right into the fucking trailer wall. That was an epic moment.
it it was and is, and it's just one of the many beatdowns but that's the one that really sticks out to me. Um, I know that they were obviously again strike while the iron's hot. You want to get the belt on Hogan. Giant was champion. They went into Hog Wild. I think the writing was kind of on the wall here. The Giant, not a no knock on Paul White, can do way more than I can do inside the ring, but not where this is not where it's needed. And Hogan does go over belt shot. 1, 2, 3. You've got a new champion, and he fucking spray paints the belt.
That was probably the next big fuck you wrestling moment that Hogan did with this heel side of himself. And it really solidified him in the bad guy role. I mean, obviously he's a heel and he's running around with a bunch of heels. And they're beating the crap out of everybody. But when he spray painted the gold belt, that was like, it was sacrilege to watch it because there he is, Hulk Hogan, defacing the most recognizable title on the planet.
It was something that you never forget. It's a moment. It was probably one of the bigger moments of that pay per view, hands down. You get the belt on Hogan, and you're off to the races. Now on the backside, you've got obviously Hall and Nash are working tags, working their ways to the tag titles. Um, Again, you think I thought back then that we're Sting. Sting's gonna have to get him some after Hogan goes over on the Giant. But before we get to anything of that nature, you get to uh, September the 2nd, which is what's the next evolution of the NWO? You've got Hall, you've got Nash, you got Hogan, you got DiBiase, the first of many heel turns or turns by the Giant. What did you remember about the fucking Giant coming out and joining the NWO?
Um, you know, when he first came out, I wondered if he was going to turn or not, but I had hopes that he wasn't just because of the issue over the belt, right? But of course, in when you look back at it, you're like, no, this makes perfect sense to write in that the Giant turns after the belt switch. And realistically, if you look at his character arc, what did he have going for him really? After dropping the belt to Hogan, he wasn't doing a lot outside of getting beat down every time he came to the ring. So it made perfect sense for him to join the NWO. He wants to gain a foothold in the power structure, and they had it, all of it, every single bit of it.
Fall Brawl is the next place that I want to go. I want to jump to, because again, like this, the NWO to me, it's it's only picking up momentum and it's only picking up steam. Obviously, there's reasons why it all came crashing down.
Well, and still you're waiting to find out what's going on with
what's
Sting.
and what's the next evolution? Who's gonna turn next? Because they were always teasing, right? And they're always setting you up, and it was really it's just good fucking storytelling the whole way around.
Well,
At
because you
least in
never
these, at
knew
least in
who in
these,
the roster.
in these. I'm sorry,
You
John.
never knew.
In these
Yeah.
initial years, in this initial year and a half, year to year and a half, like to me, that was year and a half, 2 years was probably all right, cool. But anything after that, we're getting watered down. But that's what to me is what made that exciting. But what were you saying? Go ahead.
I was just saying that at that particular time, before the factions got really big, you didn't know who in the roster was gonna turn. Like anybody was up for bid. And you realistically, and the more people that were turning and joining the NWO, you literally were like, wow, who's next? Like, what's gonna happen tomorrow when the show comes out? What name are they gonna pull out of a fucking hat and have join the NWO this week? And that was kind of where they ended up with it. Like what they're doing with the story was no, everybody could be the next guy. So you can't trust anyone for anything, anywhere.
And not just that. I mean, keep in mind we're still in infant internet days, so like they're plugging the hotline. It's starting to turn some profits with Gene Okerlund. They're alluding or making references to like former people who may be coming in, former world champions coming to WCW, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're finding different ways to milk the horse or milk the cow, sorry, so to speak, with different revenue uh, garnering means is probably the better word. Um, the angle going into Fall Brawl is, can we trust Sting? This is the angle where the fake Sting hopped out of a limo in the parking lot. Luger thought it was Sting. He gets jumped. So, they're setting in motion, is Sting, with the NWO. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker as a kid. I think it was Flair and Anderson, Luger, and Sting were the team going in against the NWO. Um, the final entrant for the team NWO is the look-alike Sting, Jeff Farmer. Comes in and does his Sting stuff. Sting is the last guy out for Team WCW, wrecks house, and fucking leaves. Bro, when the Stinger walked out, like, that's when my heart crumbled.
Yeah, I can't say that was an easy night for me either. As a Sting mark, I've always loved the guy, and to see him come out and see what I thought was him come out and crack Luger, that was it for me. I was like, oh no, not him too.
It was, it was great. It was a great War Games match. Everything seemed hot, that was going on at this point. And looking back, outside of the most recent Bloodline angle, I don't think that I can remember where something just felt really, really hot and realistic to me. than this angle. And it could be, again, I was a kid when this came out, when this was running live. Um, but the first layers of the nWo, like I'm here for it, and I'm all about it. What say you when Sting, when he walks out and Luger ends up taking the loss for Team WCW? What was up?
So in my head, right, the controversy between Luger and Sting really reminded me of the devolving friendship between Savage and Hogan from a couple decades before that. You see these two guys are on riding this giant high wave. They're doing this thing together. They're the best of friends, and then stuff isn't good, and they fight about it. And the intensity of that feud had the same feel for it for the feud that happened between Sting and Luger here, because Sting took some personal ass shots at Luger because he felt a certain kind of way about being doubted not only by his friends but by the fans and the company. And when he came out and said, "It's not me, I didn't do that," and everyone was like, "Yeah, okay, sure. Are you sure you didn't?" That was the end for him. And we see Sting go off on this like isolated, I don't want to call it a sabbatical, but he becomes a one man army and a terrifying nightmare to the NWO.
This is where Sting goes away for 13 or 14 months, and uh, it's a hard road for the WCW moving forward. Now, I know that at one point, and who wasn't in the NWO. I want to focus on like what the earlier stuff, because like they were making money, a lot of money. They were obviously selling merchandise. Even to this day, I believe Kevin Nash gets royalty checks off of NWO merch that's
Yep.
still being sold. And I know at least through the WWE. Um, while there's a lot happening in the forefront, there's also a lot happening in the background, because you and I are both tag team marks, and I would hate to gloss over what feel like there were a couple of really good matches or series of matches between Steiner brothers and Hall and Nash, as well
Those were
as
epic.
Hall and Nash and Harlem Heat, because I think Harlem Heat, for me growing up in the '90s, like I was fans of those guys. They were to me in like 93, 94. Like I bought what they were selling as far as the tag team was concerned, and even into the mid to late '90s as well. But more so back then, and they told really good stories. But I think between the two teams, you'd have to say that the Steiners and Hall and Nash would probably be the one that would get the nod from me. What say you?
I don't know. So WCW's always been a really special place for me because of the tag team division. And as a tag team mark, being a longtime tag team fan and currently love tag team wrestling, like it's probably my favorite part of wrestling in general. WCW always had very interesting, very well rounded, and put together tag teams. Think about the Nasty Boys. You think about Harlem Heat. You think about the Horsemen. You think about,
The Blue
they're
Bloods.
yeah, the Blue Bloods, and the number of people that they put together and really made pop as tag teams too, right? Especially
Whatever happened to
into the mid to
remember
late
you
90s.
remember Fire and Ice?
Of course,
Yeah.
of course, yeah. But I mean, they had a multitude of tag teams that had told great stories and were great character progression and shit. So to see them put these big tag teams like Harlem Heat and the Steiner brothers in these matches with the outsiders, that was a big fight feel every time, like no questions asked. And to see the outsiders win the tag titles, it really set thing like this is the one of the starts to the tipping points. It's like, oh God, they've got the world title, they've got the tag titles, they've got all this stuff going on. What if they do just take over everything? Because that was what it looked like they were going to do.
Well, what I like about with the Outsiders specifically, they didn't hot shot to the top of the tag team division. Like they worked some stories, they did some side stuff and some angles, and they picked up the belts from Harlem Heat the first go around at Halloween Havoc. Which coincidentally is the same Halloween Havoc that we get Hogan and Savage in that interesting toupee that the Hulkster was sporting for the world title, and it was kind of fitting to see that, right? Like, what did you think about on Howling Havoc specifically? With the Outsiders leaving with the tag titles and Hogan taking on Randy Savage and beating him for the world title.
The match between Hogan and Savage is like a throwback, right? That's the match everybody wants to see happen again because they're the legends, they're the big icons, they're the so much history between the two of them, so much stuff going on, right? Um so when Hogan wins that title, that really solidifies him as a world champ in WCW. And it's over the nWo spray painted belt. And it's still telling that story. And it really drove home how powerful the nWo was getting. Because now Hogan has the belt again and he beat Savage for it. So with that happening, the Outsiders pulling the tag titles. You've got the stuff with Giant and Jarrett going on. You've got let's see,
This is the night
all the stuff going
This is
on
the
in the
night that Roddy Piper shows back up.
right. Yeah, so they're bringing in all of this legend power. They're putting in all of this heat. They're bringing up all of this stuff. They're trying to really push this as far as they can.
Now, I want to play devil's advocate for a minute. Now, don't I marked out big time as a kid to see Piper come out and get up in Hogan's face, and I want to ask, looking back, and it's easy to play armchair quarterback. Why would we go to Piper and not go to someone else within our roster? I'm not saying that you go to Flair. I'm not saying Sting's doing his thing. I'm not saying you go to Luger. I'm saying why wouldn't you go to somebody that you've got, because obviously they're going to get elevated even in the loss, and versus going with Piper. What would you think, and what's your perception on that?
My perception as a booker is always go for the biggest talent you can afford.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means you go for the legend to do the legend versus legend stuff, then that's definitely what you do. And I'm pretty sure around that time, that was what, the middle of the
96.
late 90s?
No,
Yeah,
96.
96. So they had some video games coming out and needed to get some draw power on their rosters for the games as well. And that was one of the reasons that Roddy Piper got brought in so that they could publish him in their roster on video games.
That's a fun fact that I was not aware of. Piper and Hogan end up doing, I felt their setup was really good, like to a degree. You go to they're back and forth. I believe in this time frame, I believe we get Eric Bischoff outed as being in cahoots with Hogan, but we also get Six Pac coming over from the WWF at that point. What do you remember about Six Pac showing up?
So I never thought that he made that big of an impact on the NWO, to be fair. I know that he made a giant impact in Degeneration X, and really giant is maybe a big word for that too. I don't think that Sean's ever been the lead guy anywhere. But he makes a good underling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes somebody that can take a bump for you. Um,
For sure. Like he can make an angle go off, but he's definitely not the lead character in the show. But he does make a great, believable stand-up underling. You know what I mean? So with him being involved now, you've got a mouthpiece that can just go off about the agenda.
I used to
And then
love the
you don't have to talk so much.
I love the fact that he had that camera, and he always had that camera with him, and was doing his spiel with it and his shtick with it.
So I wanted to touch on that too. This is right around the time that I think right before that Nick Patrick had been kind of lumped into them, and then with Six coming over and Eric Bischoff joining, this is where they start to move into the black and white filming.
Yeah.
And like they move into the we're taking over the show, and they do the entire show now in black and white with an empty arena or whatever. They were doing different things with the angle than you saw in other places and that you really saw in WCW before. So to see the contrast from the normal show and then all of the nWo stuff being in black and white and being really jarring and kind of angled to the side, the filmography made it stand out.
It's all they're all pieces to it. The production behind it, all the way to the delivery from the talent involved. And while it's easy to say that the NWO came in and ran roughshod over the roster, et cetera, they're drawing money and making money and leading WCW to profit levels that they'd never seen before. Um, a good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, these are facts. Um, Piper and Hogan, they're like I said, they're billed. They go through World War III, where they do the contract signing, and that's where they first expose the hip, right? Like the Hogan goes after the hip and dastardly fucking heel that bastard. And they lay down Piper to get to a Super Brawl, I believe. Um, it's still, to me, the angle is still running smooth. It's hot. They're not oversaturated yet. This is like, to me, I would have kept the NWO right here where it's at, numbers wise. Because once we start getting into 97 and 98, like you've got a football fucking squad of 900 people, it seemed like at one time. This seemed to be to me it was like, all right, this is it. Let's keep it here. What say you?
Well, I mean, at this point, it's like when they all come out together, they fill the ring up. It looks like a battle royal's about to happen. But then they don't stop there. Like they just keep going, and they keep going, and they keep going. And it's interesting because even though there were so many people, all of them were doing stuff. Like they had storylines going where different groups of them were doing different things, but all of them were doing something, working someone over. They had an angle going with someone. And I don't know if without the angle of the NWO, you have enough material to work with in the writing room to give all of those stars a piece of something to do. You know what I mean? Like, what do you do with that many talents?
A lot to a little, and it's Starcade that they're building towards, not Super Brawl. Um, Super Brawl, I believe, is later. I think the, at the end of the day, let's finish up with Piper and Hogan. What do you remember about that particular match? What I didn't like about it, um, was that it wasn't for the championship, where Piper put Hogan to sleep.
Right.
But it wasn't for the championship.
Yeah, it was a non-title match because they had already named a number one contender for the World Heavyweight title. Happened to be who? Oh, the Big Show. That's right. He went to go fight Hogan. But that also gave a little bit, like, it gave a strange rub to the NWO too, because then they could play this angle of the Giant being the number one contender, and it gave Hogan a safe space to operate in his title.
It, mm, not a fan. Um,
Whether you're a fan or not, if you look at it from a booker's perspective, it keeps your champion safe from Bischoff's angle, right? As the heel vice president guy that's running the show and the guy that wants to do all this stuff for NWO and be the mouthpiece and talk all that game and have the swag, the step and the power, right? So how do you do that? You make sure that your titles stay right where the hell they're at.
Piper goes over on Hogan, which I, was shocked because back then, Hogan was pretty much unstoppable. But one of the few times he did a job, there you go,
But he's
bud.
not a face anymore. So it takes away some of his plot armor. However, not being a title match means that he can lose clean and still prance around as the champion. And as a heel, he doesn't even have to sell it. Oh yeah, brother, he might have pulled off a fast one that night, but he won't do it again.
Um, Within the next couple of months, this is where I think we start getting a little out of control. They lay down an ultimatum. Ultimately, join. You're either with us or against us. Uh, Bagwell, Wall Street, Big Bubba Rogers, Scott Norton, all within the next several weeks.
Chono. Masahiro
Masa
Chono.
Chono.
I think
Uh,
that was my favorite ad to the NWO ever. When Chono joined, that night was epic. They were all just staring at him terrified.
yeah, I mean, this is all heading into Starcade, but I think that we're starting to water some shit down. And I get it. Like, maybe you gotta have some guys to feed, right? Because if your top baby faces are gonna be putting over the NWO for the foreseeable future, you gotta have some guys to make them shine them up, make them look good. So maybe that's why they're here, and I can buy that, and I can be okay with that. But if it's just for a strength and numbers kind of situation, I think you're going the wrong direction with it. But I think this is kind of where the train starts to go off the rails a little bit. But that's just my opinion.
No, I don't think that you're wrong. I think that by the time they got to like past the Starcade stuff, right? Um with the fallout with the Eddie and DDP and Giant really pushing to like, no, actually I'd like to get my title shot. I don't really want to take orders from you, or definitely don't want to do a JOB. Like, I have a shot at the championship. Why wouldn't I go at it like I should? I mean, if you're the champ and you're the man, you should be able to hold on to it, right? I don't know. Let's find out. And it caused a lot of friction.
It yeah. Um, I can say, but obviously you know why, right? Like it's just
Well, right.
um,
Because they're building up for this next big piece.
Yeah, the Giant was obviously transitional. In my opinion, it was a transitional piece of business because they flipped him again like 4 or 5 months later. For me, going into to that particular piece of the story, I kind of knew, off rip what was happening there. It just was what it was. I was never a big proponent of Hogan Giant matches. They just weren't for me. Um, so I never really got all uppity or giddy if I saw it headlining a pay per view.
Well, I don't think I did either. I think it's kind of they want it to be the old Hogan Giant days, and it just isn't. No rub off Paul, but he's not the Giant. Like, he just isn't.
Um, Super Brawl is the Piper Hogan rematch, and this is the night that we get Randy Savage. Um, he, Hogan over Piper for the belt when it matters, brother. Um, when Savage joins, I know it's not a knock on Savage, and I liked his madness character. That just kind of was like, ugh, here's another one.
Well, and like I said earlier, they're trying to push all of the old themes. You get NWO gets Savage and Hogan back together. He reunites with Miss Elizabeth. He goes off on this crazy Savage tangent. You know what I mean? Like it's all old things that they're trying to rehash under a new coat of black and white paint.
Yeah, I agree. They end up at Super Brawl, same card. Luger and the Giant end up taking the belts from the Outsiders. Six beats Malenko for the Cruiserweight Championship. You get Savage joining in the NWO, and kind of the shit just kind of hits the fan from there. Let's fast forward because let's just talk about some of the highlights. Let's bullet point it.
Best bullet point ever is when they suspend Bischoff.
Well,
That's the best bullet point ever because that sets the whole NWO faction up for a bunch of bullshit.
let's talk. Let's talk Hogan Rodman versus Page and Carl Malone.
That's a joke. Every time any wrestling company has ever pulled some big sports star into the fold to be a wrestler, right? It's always been a big spectacle, and that's all it is. Now, I'll give Rodman credit. He was better in the ring than I expected him to be, but he was not a wrestler. He's a basketball player.
What about your thoughts on Hogan and Bischoff versus DDP and Jay Leno?
That was even worse than the Rodman spot. Honestly, that wasn't even a good athlete. That's a late night talk show host climbing into the ring. I mean, I thought that they had their fill with actors, but here we are. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Realistically, like from a Booker standpoint, it's like this is what I'm putting my money on to make money on TV. I don't know. Maybe not.
Well, all the time in the background too. Now you got you're working towards obviously Hogan Sting, which to me that we'll get there in a few minutes. But give me some of your bullet points. You talk about Eric Bischoff and his suspension and that storyline.
Well, when he got suspended, it took away the absolute authority of the NWO to book matches and do things that they were doing to get over. And they were using Bischoff's authority and power to put themselves in all the best positions to get belts. And now that Bischoff doesn't have that power, as soon as he gets suspended, what role does he end up playing? He's just a mouthpiece now. So it completely deflates the NWO's ability to put other people in bad positions.
What else? Give me some more. Give me some more of your NWO moments.
I think I think when Kurt Hennig and Steve Michaels, Chris Benoit against the Nash Conan Six and Bagwell deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that match was a turning point into kind of jumping the shark because we thought that we had seen the group grow bigger and bigger and that they were going to just do what they were doing and they started to lose power. But yet still here, we have Kurt Hennig turning on the team to go NWO. And it's like, wait, we're still losing members of the roster to the NWO even without the power of the Office of Bischoff. And it really turned a lot of tide for them and sets up for some more debut to WCW with Legends.
This is where, to me, everything starts to get a little convoluted and a little just and starts to lose. I start to lose interest in it because I think there's just way too much attached. Uh, when the last little bit that I know, like I go back to again Hogan and Sting. How to me when that match rolled around, I was so amped up and ready for it. And I didn't think it was a terrible match until we got to the finish. That's the
Well,
that was supposed to be the fast count. That wasn't a fast count.
this is the slowest fast count in history.
I'm saying. Um, so many stories about that finish and what it meant and what it actually did. Some say that that's the moment that killed the WCW. Some I personally don't. I think it was a combination of many different things along the way. Um, but I go back to that being a crowning moment. Like that was a big night, and it was to like my hero has come back and is here to avenge everything and to take out Hogan in the process. I thought it was okay. The finish was a little whack, but outside of that, wasn't terrible. The story leading up to it was phenomenal. The delivery at the end was less than best. Less than best. How about that?
Right. No, I think you're probably right about that. I think that the NWO angle becoming overinflated and realistically not leaving room for anything else in the writing room, um, coupled with the pressure from Vince's WWE product and the increasing cost of television production and putting shows on TV as often as they were trying to, I think all of those things were factors to it. But I definitely think that the NWO angle becoming this overinflated thing led to a lot of the downfall of WCW. I think the ratings drop um, in the split between the NWO Nitro and the Thunder show being the WCW show. I think when those ratings started to fall off and the fans of wrestling were more split between WWE and the WCW product, I think it took eyes off of some things, and that competition between the two companies really was what rounded down WCW.
I agree. I agree. They splinter off. Obviously, the Wolf Pack was a thing, but that's another story for another day. I think. When it comes to to me to the NWO, it's Hogan, Hall, Nash, and call me crazy. And there were a lot of great stories that were done along the way. One that probably should touch on just for shits and giggles: Randy Savage and Diamond Dallas Page. That was one that to me stole the fucking show. Take yourself off mute.
No, I it was a good match. I
It
think
was a
that I was more
series, bro.
focused.
It was a series
Well,
of matches.
realistically, the only one that mattered was the rubber band at the end.
Good point.
So, I mean, the build-up was good, but that was the match that mattered. And I think it was a good series. It built a good story. But for me, I was more focused on what Sting was doing.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Like that was the big part of the story to me when Sting was doing the crow gimmick. While I didn't like it, I never was a big fan of the crow Sting. I always liked his beach body Sting and like with the colors and the sparkles and the fringe jackets was always my favorite Sting. But when he was doing the crow gimmick, it was authentic. He was mad about the state of wrestling, it seemed like, and he wanted to put things right.
John, I think we've we've tackled the early years of the NWO. That's what we'll call this. So we'll circle back around
Sure.
to some Wolfpack stuff and
But yeah, because
the
then it
internal
becomes a whole
struggle.
different thing.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
once the Hollywood and Wolfpack split happens, the show becomes different too.
Yep, it does, and it all contributes to the downfall, in my opinion, of WCW. But I think we've knocked it down, brother. I'm glad that we got to take some time to talk about this.
Yeah, me too. I was happy to be here. I hope that the fans out there, the listeners, enjoyed us talking about the beginnings and the favorite moments and the oh shits of the NWO. If you guys have enjoyed the show, don't forget to go down below and hit that like and subscribe to feed the algorithm and drop those huge elbows on that notification bell to make sure that you keep up with all of the CCP enterprises and new content coming here at the channels. You got a lot of stuff coming up here, I think, in the next few weeks. And if you're interested in not just wrestling content, but content in general, don't forget to go down below and follow all the links to our channels and Twitters. We are glad that you've been here. It's been a pleasure. We love each and every one of your faces. And we will definitely see you again next time. It's been a pleasure to share this moment with you. We've got a lot more to dive into. So, for me, NWO, maybe for life.